Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. So please subscribe when you're finished listening. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Today's movie is WarGames, 1983. I wanted to get to this movie early in 2017 because it figures prominently in the book Ready Player One, 2011, and the movie Ready Player One, 2018, which is coming out shortly. When I first saw WarGames, I was still in the Army. I went the next day and signed up for Computer Programming 101. I had never even seen a PC. I found out two things. One, I'm a terrible coder. And two, it must be in the second class where they teach you to launch missiles. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
James Tolkien was FBI agent Wiggin. Tolkien was first covered in episode 88, Back to the Future, 1985. Matthew Broderick played the main gamer, David. Broderick was born in 1962 in New York City.
I'm walking here!
Since his father was an actor, Broderick went on stage at 17. His film debut was in the very funny Max Dugan Returns, 1983. This was followed the same year with his excellent performance in WarGames, 1983. He had a major role in the fantasy Lady Hawk, 1985, and became a generational icon with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 1986. Other Broderick movies include Project X, 1987, where he proved he could work with animals, Biloxi Blues, 1988, where he was totally convincing as a new Army recruit, Family Business, 1989, the Civil War drama Glory, 1989, the Mafia animal rights spoof The Freshman, 1990. He voiced Simba in The Lion King, 1994. He won MTV's Best Fight with Jim Carrey in The Cable Guy, 1996. He was unfortunately in Godzilla, 1997. Played a teacher in Election, 1999. Played the title role of Inspector Gadget, 1999. He killed the role of Leo Bloom in the remake of The Producers, 2005. Fought Danny DeVito in Deck the Halls, 2006. Lent his voice to the Bee Movie, 2007. Led the crew in Tower Heist, 2011. And was recently in Manchester by the Sea, 2016. In a television movie that I have not seen, Christmas Story Live, 2017, he played a grown-up Ralphie. Broderick is still very active. Dabney Coleman played Mr. McKittrick, who was a real jackass. Coleman was born in 1932 in Texas. Coleman began attending the Virginia Military Institute in 1949. You know, the kids held the center of the line at the Battle of New Market during the Civil War, and it was presented in The Horse Soldiers, 1959. Coleman left VMI after 2 years to study law at the University of Texas, and he eventually began studying theater. During this period, he also spent 2 years in the Army. Coleman started working on television, and he's always been very successful in that medium. He eased into movies with small parts in films like The Scalp Hunters, 1968, Downhill Racer, 1969, and The Trouble with Girls, 1969, which is an Elvis film. The 1970s saw him still playing small parts in better films such as Cinderella Liberty, 1973, The Towering Inferno, 1974, Midway, 1976, along with the rest of the free world, Viva Knievel, 1977, Go Tell the Spartans, 1978, and North Dallas 40, 1979. Coleman was at his peak in the 1980s, and he perfected his grouch boss type. Movies include 9 to 5, 1980. 9 to 5, way to make a living. On Golden Pond, 1981, with Katharine Hepburn, Jane, and Henry Fonda. Tootsie, 1982. WarGames, 1983. The Muppets Take Manhattan, 1984. The Man with One Red Shoe, 1985. And Dragnet, 1987. In the 90s and beyond, Coleman is continuing to work, and some of his better films are The Beverly Hillbillies, 1993, You've Got Mail, 1998, Inspector Gadget, 1999, and Stuart Little, 1999. John Wood played Professor Falcon. Wood was born in England in 1930. Wood began acting while at university. He was a stage actor primarily, but his first movie was Salome, 1953, where he played a sword dancer. Other early films include It Takes a Thief, 1960, The Avengers, 1961, The Mouse on the Moon, 1963, Which Way to the Front, 1970, and the Vonnegut tale Slaughterhouse-Five, 1972. He had a big run in movies in the 1980s and 90s. These films include his pivotal role in WarGames 1983, his great role in Lady Hawk 1985, The Purple Rose of Cairo 1985, Jumping Jack Flash 1986, The Madness of King George 1994, which is better than it sounds, the remake of Sabrina 1995, Richard III 1995, The Avengers 1998, being one of two people that were in both Avengers movies, Chocolat 2000, The Little Vampire 2000, and The White Contessa 2005. Wood died in 2011. Ally Sheedy played the role of Jennifer Short. Sheedy was born in 1962 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
At the age of 12, she wrote a best-selling children's book. She started dancing and was on her way to being a ballerina until physical changes ended that dream. By the age of 15, she was working off-Broadway and doing small television roles. At 18, she moved to LA and enrolled at USC. It was not long before she was getting more roles. Her performances in theater led to film work beginning with Bad Boys 1983, playing Sean Penn's girlfriend. Every time I see this movie is on, I stop to watch it only to find out it's Bad Boys 1995 with Martin Lawrence. She was great as a sparky high school student in WarGames 1983 with Matthew Broderick. She played the romantic interest of Rob Lowe in Oxford Blues 1984 as they challenged the English school system. She played an emo girl in The Breakfast Club 1985 before she bloomed into a beauty. She played a college graduate in St. Elmo's Fire 1985 with the rest of the Brat Pack. Sheedy really shined in Short Circuit 1986, playing a leading role. In Only the Lonely 1991, she played the love interest of cop John Candy, while his mother, played by Maureen O'Hara, tried to stop the relationship. This movie is better than it sounds. In High Art 1998, she drew on her own experience with pill addiction to play a person lured into that life. Sheedy is still working, but she is no longer at the level of before. Recently, she played the role of Scott's teacher in X-Men Apocalypse 2016. Barry Corbin played Air Force General Behringer. Corbin was born in 1940 in Texas. He has the accent to go with it. Corbin began studying at Texas Tech, where he was in a number of plays. He later attended the University of Texas, but left for a stint in the Marine Corps. His first movie was Urban Cowboy, 1980. He was in another bull riding movie the same year, Stir Crazy, 1980. Other movies include WarGames, 1983, Nothing in Common, 1986, and No Country for Old Men, 2007. Corbin has been extremely successful on television. With all his movie roles, he is probably best known as Maurice J. Minifield from television's Northern Exposure 1990 to 1995. Corbin is still very active. 3 minor characters rounded out the cast. First was Eddie Deason as computer geek Melvin. Deason was born in 1957. He is known for WarGames 1983, The Polar Express 2004, Grease 1978, and the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water 2015. Joanne Clay played Pat Healy. Her main job was building drama by repeating what the computer was doing. She was born in 1949 and only had 2 movie credits, WarGames 1983 and The Legend of the Lone Ranger 1981. Unfortunately, she died at an early age in 1995. Maurice Chaikin played Jim Sting, the head computer geek. He was born in 1949 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Chaikin is known for WarGames 1983, Dances with Wolves 1990, My Cousin Vinny 1992, and Mouse Hunt 1997. Chaikin died in 2010. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This movie begins with two Air Force officers, Michael Madsen and John Spencer, driving through a sandstorm to a 1950s-style house. They show their passes to the mirror and are admitted to a missile silo. Their shift is routine and normal until they get the code to launch the missiles. The scene ends with one officer refusing to turn his key while the other threatens to shoot him if he does not. The scene switches to North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, the place that tracks Santa Claus, Cheyenne Mountain Complex, and possibly the oldest private in the Air Force, Stack Pierce. Some presidential suits are getting briefed by Mr. McKittrick, Dabney Coleman, his assistant, Pat Healy, Jewin Clay, and Air Force General Behringer, Barry Corbin, as to why the men in the silos failed to launch when ordered to do so. The big board shows all of the military activity worldwide. Very much against the wishes of General Behringer, the civilians want to replace the men in the silos with a computer. Specifically, the War Operations Plan Response, WOPR. The WOPR plays out scenarios of World War III and makes recommendations for responses based on the attack. As it is explained, it plays war games.
The WOPR spends all its time thinking about World War III. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it plays an endless series of war games, using all available information on the state of the world.
The suits will recommend to the president that the men be removed from the silos and replaced with electronic relays. The scene switches to the 20 Grand Palace Arcade in Seattle. David Lightman, Matthew Broderick, is crushing the Galaga machine before school. He is late for biology class. His teacher is a real jackass. He taunts David and cute girl Jennifer Short, Allie Sheedy. David offers a joke at the teacher's expense and is sent to the principal's office.
Could someone tell me, please, who first suggested the idea of reproduction without sex? All right, Lightman. Maybe you could tell us who first suggested the idea of reproduction without sex.
Your wife?
Get out, Lightman. Get out.
Where apparently he is a regular. But it's a trick because he wants to steal the new password to the school's mainframe. After school, Jennifer gives David a ride to his house on her moped. David has a pretty nice computer with an optical coupler for his phone and a 10-inch floppy drive. He dials the school mainframe and changes his and Jennifer's biology grade. She freaks a little and demands he change her grade back before she leaves. Meanwhile, the silos are being dismantled and electric launchers are being put in. The launchers have a 10-digit code. David is trying to hack a company in Sunnyvale, California, so he can play their games early. He sets an auto-dial program to search for dial-up access. This is before everything was connected online. The next day, Jennifer meets him at the arcade and has changed her mind about the grade. They go back to his house and she sees the dialing program. One of the numbers is an airline, and David makes reservations for 2. David finds a computer that does not identify itself. When he lists games, the first is Falcon's Maze, and the last one is Global Thermonuclear War. Still without the password, David and Jennifer go to visit computer programmers Malvin, Eddie Deason, Jim Sting, Maury Chaikin. The pair fight incessantly but eventually point David to the first game on the list and the author of the code, Falcon.
Wow, where'd you get this? I was trying to break into Protovision. I wanted to see the program for their new games.
Hey, wait, Jim, I'm not through yet.
Remember you told me to tell you when you were acting rudely and insensitively? Remember that? You're doing it right now. Theater-wide biotoxic and chemical warfare. This didn't come from Protovision.
You bet it didn't. Ask him where it did come from, Jim. Go ahead, ask him.
I told you already.
Looks military to me. Definitely military. Probably classified, too.
Yeah, but if it's military, why does it have games like checkers and backgammon?
Maybe because those are games that teach basic strategy.
Jim, how do I get into that system? I want to play those games.
You're not supposed to see any of that stuff. That system probably contains the new data encryption algorithm. You'll never get in there.
You might look for a back door.
I can't believe it, Jim. That girl's standing over there listening and you're telling about our back doors?
Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head, back doors are not secrets.
Where are you guys dumb? You guys are so dumb. I got this thing all figured out. I figured it out all by myself.
Oh, yeah, Malvin? How would you do it?
The first game on the list. Go right through Falcon's Maze.
David does basic library research and finds out about the creator, Professor Falken, John Wood. He also finds out that the professor's family was killed and that he has also passed away. Still, he is unable to break into the system. Jennifer comes to visit, and as David shows her his research, they hit upon the password, Joshua, the name of Falken's dead son. David logs in using the password Joshua. He has actually reached the Whopper, the NORAD computer created by Falken. The computer offers to play a game, and David asks to play Global Thermonuclear War.
Shall we play a game?
Oh.
I think I missed him.
Yeah, weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Love to. How about global thermonuclear war?
But the computer wants to play chess. After another request, they begin Global Thermonuclear War, with David and Jennifer being the USSR, the Soviet Union, or the Russians, depending on how you want to call them. As they begin the simulated attack, the war room at NORAD begins getting missile launch warnings. David and Jennifer launch their submarine attacks. General Behringer changes the DEFCON rating, which is defense condition, and alerts the Strategic Air Command aircraft. He alerts the missiles in the silo and calls the president. About this time, David's dad calls him to clean up the trash. He turns off the computer and the NORAD screens go clear. One of the computer techs comes in yelling that it's not a real attack and it is a computer simulation created by an outside hacker.
Stop! It's a simulation! There's an attack simulation running!
What the hell's he yelling about? I didn't order any simulation.
We're not being attacked! It's a simulation!
Whoa now, hold it! You're not supposed to be running here. Somebody can get hurt.
The next day, David and Jennifer hear of the alert based on the simulation. They both suspect that they may have been involved. Joshua calls David, so he gets rid of the dial-up number, but Joshua calls back and wants to keep playing the game. Joshua says the primary game goal is to win the game. David hangs up, but the computer keeps calling. The next day, David is grabbed by the FBI outside of a Seattle 7-Eleven. They take him to NORAD in Colorado for interrogation, which seems a little far to me. FBI agent Wiggin, James Tolkien, is heading the investigation. Mr. McKittrick and General Behringer argue over whether this was a prank or a master security breach. McKittrick takes David into his office to interrogate him. David tells him that Joshua called him back. McKittrick gets distracted when they find out that the launch code has been stolen from the Whopper. David logs onto the system and Joshua tells him that he is still playing the game and 28 hours remain. Joshua says that it doesn't matter if it's a game or real. David does manage to get Dr. Falken's address, and apparently he is still alive. David is caught in the act and he looks very guilty. They lock him back in the infirmary. The Air Force guard is busy sexually harassing the nurse. David uses some equipment to escape and join a tour group to get out of the complex. He begins hitchhiking towards Oregon and Dr. Falken. David uses a pull tab to short a payphone and get a free call. After hundreds of experiments, I can confirm that this does not work. Eventually, he calls Jennifer and asks her to send him a plane ticket. The Whopper is sending Soviet sub movements to the war room. Jennifer drives in to finish the trip with David, although she knows that the FBI has been asking questions. They catch the ferry to the island where Falken lives. On the island, a pterodactyl is flying around. Wait, what? It's a glider that Falken is flying. He is obsessed with dinosaurs and extinction. Falken is rude and sends them away. He talks in code.
Oh, is either of you a paleontologist? I desperately need a paleontologist.
No, we're high school students.
High school students? You're on my land and I didn't invite you.
But aren't you Stephen Falken?
Now, listen carefully. Path. Follow path. Gate. Open gate, through gate, close gate. Last ferry, 6:30, so run.
The Whopper sends fake Soviet bomber signals to the war room, and DEFCON is changed to 2. If it goes to 1, Whopper can launch the missiles. David tells Falken the story of Joshua. Falken has given up and wants the world to end. Falken says he could never get Joshua to learn when to give up.
The whole point was to find a way to practice nuclear war without destroying ourselves. to get the computers to learn from mistakes we couldn't afford to make. Except that I never could get Joshua to learn the most important lesson.
What's that?
Futility. That there's a time when you should just give up.
What kind of a lesson is that?
Did you ever play tic-tac-toe?
Yeah, of course.
But you don't anymore.
No.
Why?
Because it's a boring game. It's always a tie.
Exactly. There's no way to win. The game itself is pointless. But back at the war room, they believe you can win a nuclear war.
Jennifer and David get disgusted with Falcon and leave his house. As they look around the island trying to find a way off, they discuss all of the things that they have never done. They kiss, and then a helicopter hits them with a spotlight and begins chasing them. Finally, the helicopter stops and Falcon tells them to get in. The war room is still getting Soviet movement notifications from the Whopper. They get a launch detection of over 300 inbound missiles with 2,400 warheads. Behringer moves to DEFCON 1. The Whopper recommends a full-scale retaliatory strike.
Major Lamb, give me a report on the Whopper.
Initial attack profile is a full-scale Soviet strike.
What does Whopper recommend, Mr. McKittrick? Full-scale retaliatory strike. I need some machine to tell me that.
They get a sub-launch detection and go into launch mode. David, Jennifer, and Falcon race to the war room. Pat gets him in just before the big door shuts. Changes to the launch code are locked out as part of the launch procedure. Falcon looks at the board and realizes it's a bluff.
John, good to see you. You see, the wife still picks your ties.
The President's about ready to order a counterstrike. That's what we're recommending you do.
It's a bluff, John. Call it off.
No, it's not a bluff. It's real.
Hello, General Behringer. Stephen Falcon. General, what you see on these screens up here is a fantasy, a computer-enhanced hallucination.
Do you really believe that the enemy would attack without provocation, using so many missiles, bombers, and subs, so that we would have no choice but to totally annihilate them? General, you are listening to a machine. Do the world a favor and don't act like one.
He tells Behringer that such a Soviet attack does not make sense because of the retaliation. Behringer listens to Falcon and decides to call the first 3 places that are to be impacted. As the screen shows explosion, the voices on the other end of the line confirm that there has not been an attack.
This is Crystal Palace. You still on? Anyone there?
That's affirmative, sir. Yeah, we're here. Jesus H. Christ, we're still here.
Failing to trick NORAD into launching, the Whopper now begins searching for the launch codes itself. Changes are locked out. All logins are locked out, including what David used to get in.
We're trying everything. It's like the entire password file has been wiped out. I tried that. Don't you think I would have tried that?
What are those? Those are launch codes.
What are they for?
Joshua's trying to find the right code so he can launch the missiles himself.
They can't shut down the power because that would cause an automatic launch.
The machine has locked us out. It's sending random numbers to the silos.
Get the codes to launch the missiles.
Just unplug the goddamn thing.
Jesus Christ. That won't work, General.
At this rate, it'll hit the launch codes in 5.3 minutes.
Mr. McKittrick, after very careful consideration, sir, I've come to the conclusion that your new defense system sucks.
I don't have to take that, you pig-eyed sack of shit.
No, I was hoping for something a little better than that from you, sir, a man of your education.
Behringer tells the president that they may have to go forward with the attack. Games. They have it list games. David tries a couple of games with no results. Then they realize that tic-tac-toe is not on the list. They ask Joshua to play tic-tac-toe, but when they send other commands, they are thrown out. They pull up tic-tac-toe again, and David plays the computer to a draw. They then make the computer start playing itself. As the Whopper gets closer to launch, it begins playing tic-tac-toe faster and faster, drawing more power from the system. Pat calls out the launch numbers until the Whopper has all 10 numbers. Whopper starts displaying attack scenarios on the board, at least 134 times declaring the winner to be none. Finally, after drawing all of the power to the board, the computer learns and states, "Strange game. The only winning move is not to play."
Greetings, Professor Falcon.
Hello.
Joshua?
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play. How about a nice game of chess?
Then it says, how about a nice game of chess? Everyone is safe, and the evil empire collapses. At least until Pooty gets in charge. World famous short summary. Add a special character to your password. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on my site at snarkymoviereviews.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All that I ask is that you jump over to Apple Podcast and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.